And I will also let Chuck stump it at the beginning of the meeting.
Understood.
I have no time to keep my glasses on.
Yeah.
A nose wire helps, Bob, but it doesn't solve it. I joke that I know I'm alive because every time I exhale, my glasses fog up. So point of interest, if we haven't started, we had just came over the phone that York County is running out of ballots. They must have a lot better participation than what we had in Adams.
Or not as good as supply chain.
Or, yeah. The ream of paper didn't last.
All right. We have reached 7 o'clock, and I now call to order the May meeting. Could we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain for this moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
which stands
one
one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, Mrs. Hobbs, could we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Kraus? Here. Mr. Everett?
Here.
Mr. Fee?
Here.
Mr. Hollowell?
Mr. Hall will be back in about an hour.
Mrs. Janzik?
Here.
Mr. Lady?
Here.
Mr. Ponce?
Mr. Ponce sent me a note about 4 o'clock that he had been called into work.
Mr. Popowski?
Present.
Mr. Wilson?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is a recognition of delegations, and I see we have none, so we'll move on to public comment. Mr. Chuck Stump.
Thank you, President Wilson. I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about budget history and comment on the 2021-2022 budget this evening. Numbers can cause an audience to lose interest, but the numbers I will talk about this evening are your numbers and are important to illustrate my longstanding concerns about Upper Adams budgeting. Here are just a few examples. The 2016-2017 final budget included a 3.3% property tax increase and the use of $654,000 from the fund balance. The audited budget results reflected revenue excess over expenditures of over $2.63 million and $0 used from the fund balance, with a surplus exceeding the tax increase. The 2017-2018 final budget included a 5.85% tax increase and the use of nearly $721,000 from the fund balance. That budget predicted an ending fund balance of less than $22,000. The audited results reflected a revenue excess over expenditures of $1.94 million, $0 used from the fund, and an ending fund balance of $1.48 million, not the $21,689 the budget had predicted. The 2018-2019 final budget levied a 3.3% tax increase and the need to use $479,000 from the fund balance. The audited results reflected a revenue excess over expenditures of $1.47 million, again, $0 used from the fund, and once again, a surplus exceeding the tax increase. The 2019-2020 final budget increased taxes by 2.5% and allocated $428,000 from the fund balance. The year-end audit reflected a revenue excess over expenditures of $1.83 million, zero actually used from the fund balance, and again, a surplus far exceeding the tax increase. This snapshot of Upper Adams budgeting is cause enough to question the administration's budget before you this evening. Good administration, budget policy, and due diligence should not produce over $4.9 million in revenue over expenditure errors and cause 15% in property tax increases over 4 years. These tax increases have added $336 per year to the average property tax bill. The audit history doesn't reflect the estimating errors were rounding errors or that they were results of years of conservative spending, as taxpayers are led to believe. They have become repetitive and predictable, and I will continue to speak out against budget policies that yield these results. The budget you will vote on tonight would add an additional $58 per year to the tax burden with its 2.1% tax increase, despite significant COVID relief and, thanks to Mrs. Hobbs' efforts, some newly identified closeout errors from last year that added over $200,000 to the fund balance now available. That amount is nearly equal to the revenue derived from a 1.8% tax increase. The current year budget with a 0% tax increase estimated an ending fund balance of $841,000. The available balance now stands at over $1.8 million, nearly $1 million more than administration's estimate. The board and the administration can choose to learn from your audited budget history or choose to continue at taxpayer expense to embrace it as acceptable. Your choice this evening will speak volumes to constituents and taxpayers, and I hope you will choose wisely. And I thank you very much, Mr. President, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Stump. We go on now to correspondence, and I have no, I don't think I have any. Let me check real quick again. No, I have no correspondence this evening. So we go to reports. Dr. Fee or PSBA?
All righty. My report is thanks to Candy up on Agenda Manager for all to enjoy.
I will just point out a couple of important issues. The first item is that
I will just point out a couple of, the first item is that guidelines changed last week, but the governor has actually announced the gradual lifting of the emergency orders. But PDE, which is to say the Pennsylvania Department of Education, has issued specific guidance on this. The main things that are going to be of interest to people will be that from yesterday to the end of May, the maximum occupancy limits are increased to 50% for indoor events and gatherings, and 75% for outdoor events and gatherings. In other words, indoor and outdoor gathering limits are fully lifted. I think that's going to be what with graduation season around the corner, people's main concern. I have other details in there that you can look at your leisure. I also want to point out, at the risk of stepping on the toes of our federal legislation correspondent, that there's a related national story in that the American Federation of Teachers last week came out for a return to full-time in-person instruction in the fall, which was a bit of a surprise, but certainly a welcome one. So there's a lot of information about that. All the notes are in the report that take you to the primary sources. There are several other things of interest. I won't really belabor it. I do want to point out that the state Senate is working on a bill that proposes an optional additional year of instruction due to COVID for parents who wish to take it for their child. And there are a number of benefits that are beginning to trickle down, if I might use that phrase from the 80s, including some substantial ones
Pandemic EBT benefits to families of eligible students are to begin to be distributed in June, I believe. The FCC is launching an emergency broadband benefit program. That's a great interest. And I think I'll just I'll end on that note. There's a lot going on, but it's in the report, so I won't take any more of your time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Dr. Fee. Any questions or comments on the PSBA report? Hearing none, we'll go on to the FRN report. Mr. Ratowski.
Okay, the FRN report was posted on Agenda Manager yesterday. As Mr. Fee noted, the CDC has updated mask guidelines, and of course that causes a lot of questions for all of us, including our particular school district. So I did add a note in here too that the FDA authorized a Pfizer vaccine for children's 12 through 15. I thought that was an important note, given that happens to be the population or a portion of the population that we do teach. So more news will be coming out on that. They are expected to, or I should say, the results of vaccine studies for the ages, for students under the age of 12 are ongoing, and they're expected to release the results in early fall. And I would expect some news to appear around that time as well, in terms of whether children under 12 can be vaccinated. In regards to the overall budget and the federal budget, Secretary Cardona, the Education Secretary under President Biden, he went under a House examination of the Biden's budget proposal on May 5th, and certainly met some resistance from some folks in Congress as well. And I will note that the Senate, the Republican Senate, proposed a counter to President Biden's American Jobs Plan. In the Senate Appropriations Committee will begin discussion. But just a note in terms of the Republican counter proposal, there were no funds for education in the American Jobs Plan. So what we can expect is, well, who knows, but it seems that there'll be some discussion going on, and we'll see what comes out of that. I'm going to skip the rest of the report, but I did want to note that I highlighted at the bottom some of the legislative highlights in terms of bills that were offered. And I did report some bills last report, and there are absolutely no updates on those, but I repurposed them at the bottom of the report for your reading pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ratowski. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Mr. Ratowski? Okay, hearing none, we'll go on to the LIU report. Dr. Dahl.
Just a few things to update everybody on. Just like most educational entities at this time of the year, there were a number of agreements, MOUs, and job descriptions that were updated at the most recent IU meeting. There are three other items I just wanted to pay attention to. They had recently received the audit results of the LIU communications study that they had going on, and they are currently looking at future strategies as a result of the findings in that communications audit. There is also the approval for the renewal of membership to the Special Education Pool Council and the Educational Technology Pool Council through the law firm of Sweet, Stevens, Katz, and Williams. We do benefit from feedback that we receive on numerous items related to technology items, agreements, MOUs, job descriptions, a number of different things that are and advice that is provided by this law firm are shared with a number of IU districts, and from that we are able to keep on track with certain items in our district. The final thing I wanted to mention, there was a moment of silence for Michael Miller, who was the representative from the city of York. He was on the board of directors from 2012 through 2019, and he served as president of the board at the IU from 2016 through 2019. He had recently passed away. So, our condolences go out to his family. And at this point, the next meeting is scheduled for June the 1st, which is a Tuesday at 7 p.m. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Dahl. Any questions or comments on the LIU report? Hearing none, we'll go on to federal programs. Dr. Corwell and Mr. Alban.
Good evening. Under Title III news, Pennsylvania is going to be phasing in the new WIDA kindergarten screener, and that is to determine the need for ESL services for kindergarten students over the next 8 months. According to the state, this new screener is going to be much more engaging, more activity-centered for all our young learners. It should be a more responsive test and allow young students to stop when they reach the extent of their language skills. Score reports should be generated immediately, so it should be much easier for us to use. Under our local news, our elementary ESL staff is going to be piloting the Ortiz PVAT assessment for our English language learners. And what this is, it's a receptive vocabulary assessment, and it is going to make it possible for us to evaluate an individual from any language background. So it's going to help our teachers and our school psychologists tease out whether a student's learning problem is based on language or another disorder. So we're looking forward to really utilizing that this coming year. And that's all I have at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Corwell. Any questions or comments for her? None? All right, Mr. Alban.
Yes, good evening, everyone. As Dr. Dahl mentioned in his report for the LIU, we're very similar in the federal programs land right now. We're kind of closing out one year, getting ready to open up another one. So in my report this evening, I shared that we are finalizing reports and grants and monies and so forth for this year's consolidated application for all of our titles, as well as we just are starting to get into the new grant for next year, which will be due on June 30th, and we'll be writing that grant and submitting that for next year. So this is the point in the year where we're transitioning kind of out with the old and with the new and tidying things up, and also looking at other areas such as the non-public schools and so forth, making sure all of those areas have all their check boxes completed as well. I did attend a virtual PAFPC, Pennsylvania Association of Federal Program Coordinators conference. Typically, it's held at Seven Springs. It was virtual this year. And a lot of the focus on this conference wasn't necessarily on actually the title programs. It was more so on the ESSERs and the ARP, which is what ESSER 3 is. So we got a lot of information on those particular grants because they do fall under the tent of federal programs, but they're not a title. So a lot of information was shared at that meeting that was helpful during that time. In addition, I attended the Hanover area non-public consortium, and what we do there is 2 or 3 times a year, we meet with all the non-public schools in the area. For Upper Adams, it's pretty simple. We only service St. Francis Xavier in Gettysburg. So we meet there to discuss what their needs are, how things are going, are they satisfied with the level of service we're providing? And for Upper Adams, what we typically have done and continue to do is we contract out with the Lincoln Intermediate Unit, and they provide reading support for students from the Upper Adams School District that attend St. Francis that qualify for a title service in that building. So that has worked very well, and they're very pleased with the service from the IU, as are we with the amount that we're charged from them. So there's no concerns there. And finally, last meeting, I know President Wilson had some questions about title programs. So I just wanted to review them real quick. And also it's probably good for some of the new folks as well, because I'm talking about titles and you might be wondering what the heck's a title? What do you mean title? Title, that whole concept is actually out of legislation out of January 12th, 1965, all the way back there. Then a lot of the titles came out. And basically you can think of a title as a funding source, a bucket of funding. And for the longest time, the primary three areas we were concerned with were what they called Title I, Title II, and Title III. And just recently within the past, I'd say 5 years or so, we now have Title IV. So what does that mean? Well, Title I is the big one. That's the one you hear the most of. If you're a parent of a student, you know this language may be familiar to you. Title I is remedial services, extra supports in reading or math, or both, depending how a district wants to allocate that. Here at Upper Adams, based on the amount that we get and what we can serve, who and where we can service, we choose to use Title I services at Biglerville Elementary School. We use that funding to fund 2 reading specialists and a half of a third at that level, as well as supply or purchase supplies and allow them to attend conferences and get some professional development. And Upper Adams chooses only to focus on the reading because that is our area of need. And we certainly could expand to math. We certainly could expand to other buildings as well. Mrs. Kraus and I had that discussion at a recent meeting, but we don't get any more money is what it boils down to. So you can either, spread it around in a little and everywhere or a lot at one place. And we really think we get the biggest bang for our buck by putting it all into reading remediation at Biglerville Elementary. So that's how we use title. And to qualify for that, we utilize how many students at Biglerville Elementary qualify for free and reduced lunch. That's a big component. And also PDE looks at whether we have a delinquent or neglected institutions in our attendance area, which would be boarding houses, foster care facilities, those types of institutions, which we do not have those in our attendance area. So we don't get that funding source for that. So primarily they base our funding off of free and reduced for the most part. Title II is another funding source. Title II can be used for extra professional development, or another area where we use it for is class size reduction. There is a variety of different categories, but those are the two I would say most districts utilize. Or you can put Title II funds into Title I and boost your Title I funds up if you choose to. We do not. We utilize Title II funds for class size reduction at the kindergarten level. So basically we allow Title II to pay for the salaries and benefits of a kindergarten teacher so we can keep those class sizes low for the youngest of learners that we have at Biglerville Elementary. Title III, you hear Dr. Corwell speak to each month. That is specifically for English language learners. Any programs, supplies, professional development that has to do with that category, could be teacher salaries and benefits as well. All, as long as it falls under the tent of English language learners, EL programs, that is Title III. And Title IV is the newest one. Title IV came about because we had a lot of different, I should say, individual small grants out there. And what they did, they took all these small grants and they kind of put them in under one tent and created Title IV. So Title IV could be safe schools, well-rounded students, could be some technology, could be some professional development, all these different, the small types of grants that were out there that school districts were applying for, they put them under one tent. What does Upper Adams use it for? Upper Adams uses it for safe schools, school safety supplies. We use it for school safety, professional development as well. We have used it for professional development in technology. It also funds our Smart Futures program, which is our career evidence tracking software. And if we do have a little bit left over, typically we transfer that to Title II to boost up how the monies that we use to pay for the kindergarten teacher at Biglerville Elementary. So that's the primer on titles. I'll keep this in my report each month from now on, so everyone can have that as a refresher, because I know it can get confusing, but basically they're just funding sources, different buckets of funding for different purposes. Thank you.
Mr. Alden is being very kind. What he really means is he's going to leave that in there because I can never get it straight, and I ask him about it all the time. Any questions or comments for Mr. Alden? Okay, hearing none. We move on to Mrs. Kraus in.
Okay, I have a note for anyone interested that the Cumberland Perry Area Vocational Technical School will officially change its name starting the beginning of 2021 school year. And the name as listed will be Cumberland Perry Area Career and Technical Center. And the paragraph below that explains the rationale for why that decision was made. This quote came from Justin Brune, who's the director of the Cumberland Perry VoTech School. As far as the Canner Fund, we meet next week, so at this point, there's no new report.
All right, thank you very much. We move on to administrator reports. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the administrator's reports?
I just have a couple of comments. Thank you so much for all of your reports that were colorful. I always enjoy the pictures. The duck stamps especially were fun today, reading those. But I did want to, number one, comment on Dr. Corwell's report and add my cheers to the great surprise from Yellow Breeches that you received. It looks like Mrs. Buckley also received that too. So I'm curious how that's going to be divided, I guess, between the intermediate unit as well as all those students that you oversee, Dr. Corwell, but I'm sure you will figure that out. But I'm just very, very happy for you there. And I did want to also say thank you to Mr. Graham for a year of managing all the different athletic efforts. That was very challenging, I know, and I appreciate your reports, and just thank you again for seeing us through a turbulent year and helping our kids find a way, our athletes, to continue to play, advocating for them. And then lastly, with Mr. Van Dyke, I appreciated your last paragraph on the factoid. And it's hard to believe that a year out, you know, we've had the Biglerville Elementary School iPads 101, and that's just great. And I appreciate all of your advocacy and seeing that they got into the hands of those kids that needed it most. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Janzik. Any other questions?
I just had a couple comments. So first of all, Mr. Brewer, congrats on another year of PSSAs. Mr. Van Dyke, impressive savings from your decision to build out the fiber. So thank you for doing that. And I think this is one of the things I see across the school district. I've seen Ann Corwell do it, Shelley and Beth and Jamie, and just the way you're able to creatively solve some of these problems and do more with less and build things together just, you know, with a little chewing gum here and duct tape, and it ends up saving the district some big dollars. So thank you, Mr. Van Dyke. Beth, I did want to point out that I listened to the choir performance, and that was amazing this year. So thank you for sharing that. And then I did have a question to Jamie Kerstetter. Thanks for your report in terms of the reading scores. You had noted that you had done some testing with the Dibbles and FNP assessments. I was just curious to know how these turned out this year, if you even have scores back, and how does it compare to last year and previous years? You know, understanding that you're testing a different group of students and all of that, but I'm curious about the differences in reading given that we were under a pandemic.
Hi, James. We're actually just doing the assessment now. We're in the process, so I don't have all the scores yet. So I really won't know that till the end of the year, which I get a chance to break down all the data and get it back from teachers. But I'm sure, you know, I can certainly share over the summer in a meeting how we looked comparatively to previous years.
Cool, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? And Candy, Mr. Hollenbaugh has just re-entered the room. Next report is the superintendent's report, Dr. Dahl.
Thank you. I have two separate reports I want to just go over and review with everyone this evening. The first one was included in the agenda. I want to give some updates on the COVID pandemic planning update. And as you can see, last month's numbers compared to this month's in May, as of the 7th of May, our numbers are going down, which is a sign of what is happening also in our state and also the county. So the COVID cases are dropping since April, which is a good sign. The last 2 weeks, on May the 7th and May the 14th, we are actually going down to hit 2 weeks of moderate level, which is great. At that point, what has happened, and we haven't had this since November 21st, I believe, of 2020, when we had to implement the attestation form from the state, which basically said that if you remain open as a school entity, you must follow certain protocols. And we had to track our community transmission rates, number of COVID cases. We had to close buildings if we reached a certain number. That attestation form was basically implemented in efforts to make sure that we were maintaining our health and safety plan, wearing masks, and following any kind of guidance or recommendations provided from the Department of Health or PDE. More recently, as Dr. Fee had mentioned, the CDC came out and stated that fully vaccinated people within 2 weeks after the final dose do not need to wear a mask or physically distance, except for where required by law, rule, regulations, etc. So the Pennsylvania Department of Education is recommending that we continue with the plans, the health and safety plans that we have in place through the remainder of this year, because obviously most students have not been vaccinated at this point. They're just beginning to have access to those various vaccinations, you know, and it's up to parents of whether or not they would rather have or have not children vaccinated. So we will continue with the protocols that we have in place for the remainder of this year. And we will slowly open up our campuses on June the 1st as we start to think about reopening to organizations that have used our facilities. We're looking to move forward with that starting on June the 1st. So I've composed a letter. I've been working with Anthony Graham, and a letter will be sent out to various organizations that have utilized our facilities over the years, such as, you know, the Cantor Funds, you know, our organizations like the Boosters, Athletic, Band Boosters, Lions Club. We will send out notifications to them that we will begin to open up starting this summer. If there are facilities outside that are utilized with students, we will continue to follow protocols, making sure that we check and make sure that kids are able to be here safely. And there will be a protocol in place that Mr. Graham is pulling together right now that we record the health of all the participants. They're wearing masks when outdoors if they're not able to socially distance. Routine cleaning of our facilities indoors and outdoors, we will continue to do that. And that will be something that will be included for people that are electing to utilize our facilities. It will be part of the agreement that people can utilize them if we're following certain protocols. So that is coming, which is a good sign. We're seeing some changes in our community for the positive with the numbers going down. We will continue to monitor. We have our administrative symposium during the week of June 8th, 9th, and 10th. And during that week, we will take a look at a number of things, including what the beginning of next school year could look like. And we'll continue to monitor whether or not we reach a level where the governor says no masks are needed for the beginning of the next school year. So that's a quick update on COVID. The other item I would like to just make mention to is to give you an update on the anti-racism plan progress that we have made since the last board meeting. We did have training from the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission on unconscious bias training, and that was conducted on April the 30th. We had also had an additional training on Friday, May the 7th from Laura McCusker at the IU, and that was on student identity and intersectionality. And I gave a little bit of an update as to what that is in the report that I will be distributing. This report I will be publicly adding to access for the public as I did the last several months. I'm verbally sharing it right now, but I will upload this for access for the public. We do have another training that is coming from Dr. McCusker on Friday, May the 28th, and that will most likely round out our training for the school year. That is going to be on culturally responsive pedagogy. So we will have our staff involved in that training. We are also planning at this point, there are a number of things that are taking place. We have the comprehensive plan that we are actively pulling together various people who will be helping us with that plan. And we are going to be establishing, how we proceed with the comprehensive plan, and we are going to be utilizing Dr. Laura McCusker with that. We have an equity audit that was recently released to a number of stakeholders. We had about 20 to 30 was a recommendation that was given to us by Nicole Holland Sims from Patan and Laura McCusker as they were conversing back and forth with how many people to start. This will give us a baseline. And then in years to come, we will continue to monitor it and compare it to that baseline of data. School climate surveys have gone out to a number of people throughout our community. Some of you may have received them as well. And we are also moving forward with the creation of a group that will be led by Mr. Albin, taking a look at our educational equity policy. So we're trying to engage various stakeholders for all these things that are taking place. One important note is that the Fox Rothschild executive summary and the recommendations, they are currently posted on the anti-racism page on our district website. So they were released and we have been transparent about that. These are two separate items that came directly from Fox Rothschild. The district has no connection with this. They were presented to us and we uploaded them. And we are currently looking through the recommendations to see how we will proceed with it. But this is the independent audit and review that was provided to us with a number of the allegations that were brought forward back in January. So this is the executive summary of that report. The full report, obviously, with personnel being named in it and or people within the community, that is something that we are not releasing, but this executive summary provides you an overview of what had transpired. And this came directly from Fox Rothschild, and it's signed by the person who led the investigations and interviews. So communications have gone out today to the staff, faculty and staff here at Upper Adams School District. Also, any of our community partners, including each of you as board members, have received the information, and also our parents received a letter today also noting that this is being posted on our district webpage. So from here, we are going to continue to look at the recommendations. At the first review, there are a number of recommendations we are currently doing, but there are also a number that we will want to consider and try to identify like how we will move forward with some of the recommendations that are coming from the executive summary and the recommendations from the Fox Rothschild independent report. And I think just looking at it overall, it's going to be a layered process, and it will be something that will be a long-term approach. So it will take some time for us to go through and work through the items that are being recommended. There are multiple pages of recommendations that they are recommending, and we will have to take a look at what makes most sense for our community. The last thing I do want to mention is we have received the bills for May, and I do anticipate this being the most expensive month and anticipate costs at this point beginning to decrease. So the costs for this month are a little over $42,000. And there are multiple entities that are receiving that, but a large piece of that is a result of the Fox Rothschild report that was provided to us. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Dahl. Any questions or comments for the superintendent?
And we'll post a report tomorrow morning that I just shared.
Hearing no comments, we move on to the treasurer's report. Mrs. Kraus.
Okay, item 9.1, move to approve the financial report ending April 30, 2021, and the condensed board summary report for April 2021.
Second.
Motion before the board to approve the financial report ending 4/30/2021 and the condensed board summary ending the same date, and it's been seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, could I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Everett,
The answer is yes, but you don't need to hear.
Mr. Everett.
Yes.
Mr. Fee,
Aye.
Mr. Hollibaugh,
Aye.
Mrs. Janzik,
Yes.
Mr. Lady,
Aye.
Mr. Ratowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Kraus,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Okay, item 9.2, move to approve the food service fund statement of operations ending April 30, 2021.
There's a motion before the board to approve the food service summary statement ending 4/30/2021, and it has been seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Wilson,
Yes?
it is hard for me to hear the seconds. I need to know who seconded that motion, please.
Mr. Lady did.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Hearing none, could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Fee,
Aye.
Mr. Hollibaugh,
Aye.
Mrs. Janzik,
Yes.
Mr. Lady,
Aye.
Mr. Ratowski,
Aye.
Mrs. Kraus,
Yes.
Mr. Everett,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Okay, I'll put together the next two. Move to approve items 9.3, student activity funds ending April 30, 2021, and item 9.4, Biglerville High School principals accounts ending April 30, 2021.
Second.
Motion before the board, seconded by Dr. Fee, to accept the student activity fund report and the principal's account ending 4/30/2021. It's been seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Wilson, again, I can't hear them
That's
when they're
why I said
seconding the motion.
That's why I said Dr. Fee seconded it.
Thank you. My apologies.
Hearing no discussion, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Hollival,
Aye.
Mrs. Kraus,
Yes.
Mr. Lady,
Aye.
Mr. Everett,
Yes.
Mrs. Janzik,
Yes.
Mr. Ratowski,
Yes.
Mr. Fee,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, and finally, item 9.5, move to approve the ending of the Biglerville High School Tech Agency account ending April 30, 2021.
Second.
We have a motion before the board to end the Biglerville High School Tech Agency account, which was seconded by Mrs. Janzik. Any discussion? Could somebody tell me why we're ending this account? I mean, I can see the words, I just don't understand exactly what's going on.
This was an account that was held at the high school that students would pay for a iPad or a technology protection plan. And those invoices come from Sunrise, which also come out of the technology budget, out of the general fund. So those funds are now transferred to the general fund to offset the invoices from Sunrise Technology to help pay for those repairs.
So the students that put money in still have the protection?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Could we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Janzik,
Yes.
Mr. Everett,
Yes.
Mr. Ratowski,
Yes.
Mr. Lady,
Aye.
Mrs. Kraus,
Yes.
Mr. Hollival,
Aye.
Mr. Fee,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye,
Thank you. Motion carries.
thank you. Before we move to the consent agenda for a motion, does anyone have something in the consent agenda that they would like to pull out and vote on and discuss separately?
Mr. Wilson, I would just like to abstain from item 5 for the vote to elect myself as treasurer. I just don't want to vote for myself, so,
Okay, well, that means you want to pull it out then.
yes.
Okay, got it. So we will vote separately on item number 5 in the consent agenda. Anyone else have anything? I would just note that there's under item 7, Robert McQuaid is now listed as a member of the Barley Snyder firm, and that's in red. That's an update from when we discussed this earlier. So that's an administrative change. So we don't need to pull it out separately.
Just to be,
Do I hear? I'm sorry.
just to be clear, in the consent agenda, we're pulling 10.2, item number 5.
10 point, yes, I'm sorry, 10.2, item number 5. You're absolutely correct. Or are you?
Thank you.
Yes, 10.2, item number 5. All right, do you hear a motion for the consent agenda?
Second.
So moved.
No, I need to hear the motion.
So moved from James.
I need to hear the motion because we're accepting.
I would like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda
With the exception,
with the exception of 10.2, number 5.
I'll second the motion.
there's a motion before the board to approve the consent agenda as presented with the exception of item 10.2.5, and it has been seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I think there's contract information here on the roll.
Mrs. Janzik,
Yes.
Mrs. Kraus,
Yes.
Mr. Everett,
Yes.
Mr. Ratowski,
Yes.
Mr. Fee? Mr. Lady?
Aye.
Mr. Hollaball?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Thank you.
Do I hear a motion to approve item 10.2.5 on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Mr. Hollaball has moved. Any second?
Second.
Dr. Fee has seconded. Motion before the board to approve item 10.2.5, appointing Mrs. Kraus as the school board treasurer. And it has been seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. We now move on to committee reports. Mrs. Kraus, Finance.
Okay. Having a few problems here tonight. I'm getting there. I'm having a few technical problems tonight. Okay. All right, item 1, recommend approval of the tentative adoption, including advertisement of the Upper Adams School District operating budget for the 2021-2022 school year, with the final adoption set for June 15, 2021 board meeting.
Second.
There's a motion for the board to approve the tentative adoption, including advertising for the 2021-2022 school year district operating budget, and it has been seconded by Dr. Fee. Any discussion? Well, I have the document that I have, and I'm told that it's been changed, but I can't get it to be changed. On page 4, lists the unassigned fund balance as $2,234,777, which I believe to be incorrect. It could be that I have problems here with my machine.
Yes, what is updated on page 4? Let me just, is showing the updated unassigned fund balance of $1,806, 1.8 and some change, leaving the
Could you tell me the figure, please?
Yes.
1,806,000.
6,445.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's important because this figure that's on the document that I'm looking at is the what the auditors found as our balance as of 30th of June. However, it doesn't take into account what we're projecting to spend this fiscal year, the year in question, not the year for this budget. So I wanted to verify that was correct. I'd also like to point out that I also have gone back through our budgets over a number of years. In fact, I looked at the budgets from 2011, 2012 through 2019, 2020. And the audited expenditures increased by $6.85 million. Those same years, the audited revenues increased by $7.48 million. That's a difference of $636,000 over an 8 or 9 year period. That comes down to about $79,500 a year. I also looked at the average audited expenditures, or I calculated the average audited expenditures by adding up the audited expenditures for all of them, dividing it by the total number of years. And the average audited expenditures over that same period of time was $25.37 million. So we ended up on a per year basis with $79,500 over and above what we were trying to get to out of $25 million. That's 0.31%. To put this in kitchen table talk, if a family had an income of $150,000, the difference in these revenues on, using the same ratio, be about $465 per year, or $39 a month. I also went back and, using the years of 2015, 16 through this budget that we're looking at of 21-22, and using the numbers in our presentations that we've seen by our current business manager and her predecessor, for what was the average monthly increase associated with our tax increase for the average assessed property. The total of all of those from 15-16, including 21-22, was $29.06 a month. I'm not making a judgment whether that's good or bad. I'm just telling you that I went back and added the numbers, and that's what I got. So it's important that we all know that when we approve a budget, we are impacting people's lives. It's also important to know that when you're dealing with numbers in the $25 to $30 million range, if you're off by $100,000, or even if you're off by $1 million, $1 million is 1/30 of the total budget. And the things that the business administrator has to go through to guess, in many cases, what expenses will be, and guess what kind of money you're going to get from the state, or even from local taxes. There's a lot of variance in that. And trying to guess that is very, very difficult. Right now, the budget that we're looking at, we have absolutely no information on what the state revenue will be. None. And I didn't hear Mr. Albin say anything about what the federal money is going to be. And his report in there somewhere tonight, it says he hasn't received that information yet. So we have to submit this budget. I will point out that in a completely unrelated event, I found myself in a Zoom meeting with the Speaker of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. And so I said, 500 school districts in the Commonwealth have to publish a budget for public review by the 30th of this month, by 31st, so that they can meet the legal requirements and have a budget 30 days later by the end of June. And we have received no information. He didn't have anything to add to that, although he did say, which I believe Mrs. Hobbs' report this evening said, there's a possibility that we'll have a budget for 2 years from the state instead of 1. But right now we have no budget from the state instead of 1 or 2. So while Mrs. Hobbs and the superintendent and the administrative team and the treasurer of the board and myself and anyone else who's interested in this can jump in and parse the numbers, the fact is you can't predict the unpredictable. And the only thing that probably, I'm guessing, the thing that comes closest is our payroll, because we have a contract and for the majority of the payroll, and we know what that'll be. Of course, when we have retirements or resignations, that changes that right away. So my whole point here is to say people like Mrs. Hobbs and the superintendent don't glance at this thing once in a while for Mrs. Hobbs especially, this is a daily event. And the figure that I challenged at the beginning of this discussion, the 2.34, the number that she supplied us as the correct number, 1.806, is actually higher than it was a few months ago because she continues to hone the expenses for the year in execution. So she hasn't ignored this year's budget while she's looking at next year's. It's a continuum. So I will get off my soapbox, but I want to emphasize to everybody in this room and everybody who's listening to this live stream that this is a process that never stops. It has it has my personal interest on a continuing basis, and we're doing the best we can with the information provided. So I will be quiet now and see if anybody else has any comments on the budget. This budget is a 2.1% tax increase. It will be posted, assuming that we approve that tonight. In June, we will have a vote on the final budget. At that point, we can lower that, but we cannot raise it. Any discussion? Okay. Could I have a roll call, please? Yes, yes, absolutely. I want you to. You may be muted.
I just have a quick question for Dr. Dahl. If you feel this budget fulfills and lives up to the standards and the vision you have for the coming year, of course, praying that the coming year is nothing like the year we've just lived through in many, many ways, probably not all, but in many. Do you feel comfortable with this budget and being able to allow the district to grow in the ways that your vision would have it do?
That's a challenging question to answer because we're always cutting things out of the budget. There are a number of things that we would always like to expand opportunities for students, but I do feel comfortable with the budget that we have at this point. There are always new ideas, new programs that I would love to implement, but at this point, this will, continue to meet our district mission and vision.
I would also like to point out that if we approve this in a vote here in a few minutes at 2.1%, this will represent 3 of the last 4 years where we raised taxes less than the Act 1 index. And I will defer to Mr. Everett and Dr. Fee as they have more experience on the board than I, but I don't think there is another period of time of 4 years where that's true. Any further discussion? By the way, that's 3 of the last 4 years. One of those years was a 0% tax increase. And this time I really mean it. I'm going to be quiet now. Hearing no further discussion, could I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Ratowski,
Yes.
Mr. Everett,
Yes.
Mrs. Kraus,
Yes.
Mr. Fee,
Aye.
Mrs. Janzik,
Yes.
Mr. Hollowell,
Aye.
Mr. Lady,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
I congratulate everybody on the board. This is a very, very difficult decision we make every year, and it's I understand the implications. Mrs. Kraus.
Okay, moving on, item 2, recommend approval of the 2021-22 PSBA All Access Package in the amount of $10,005.43. There is no increase in cost from the 2020-21 package.
Second,
Motion before the board to approve the PSBA membership fee for the next year. And it was seconded by Mrs. Janzik. Any discussion?
What is that, or what does it mean?
PSBA?
No, PSBA, I know, but what does this all access package get?
The major benefit that we get from them with the all-inclusive package is they help us keep our policy manual up to date by looking at recent changes in law and whatnot, so that our policies can be kept current. Do you agree with that, Dr. Dole?
I do. That's a huge component for our district. It makes it much easier. We can also reach out to them for sample policies as needed and advice on policies. They have legal counsel there that can provide input to us as a result of this full access. They also provide trainings for new board members. There are a number of services that they provide us.
Thanks very much.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hollable,
Aye.
Mr. Lady,
Aye.
Mr. Rotowski,
Aye.
Mr. Everett,
Yes.
Mrs. Janzik,
yes.
Mr. Fee,
Aye.
Mrs. Kraus,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Moving on, item 3, recommend approval of the WellSpan Sports Medicine and Medical Services Agreement for the athletic trainer for a 3-year period effective July 1, 2021 to June 30, 2024 per the attached agreement.
Second.
It's a motion before the board to approve the WellSpan Sports Medicine and Medical Services Agreement. It's been seconded by Mr. Lady. Any discussion? Hearing none, but reading through this thing, I see charges, so we'll need a roll call, please.
Mrs. Janzik? Mrs. Kraus?
Yes.
Mr. Rotowski?
Aye.
Mr. Fee?
Aye.
Mr. Lady?
Aye.
Mr. Everett?
Yes.
Mr. Hollable?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Next item, recommend approval of the 2021-22 letter of agreement between True North Wellness Services and Upper Adams School District per the attached agreement. There is an increased cost of $438.40 over the 2020-21 agreement.
Second.
There's a motion before the board to approve the True North Agreement. It's been seconded by Dr. Fee. Any questions or comments?
I have a question. Is this in reference to the mental health services that we're also approving tonight under
Student assistance.
curriculum?
I think this one was a student assistance agreement, wasn't it?
Yes, this one is student assistance. The one underneath curriculum is no fee to the district. It's
Okay,
it would go through the parents' insurance.
okay. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Lady,
Aye.
Mr. Everett,
Yes.
Mrs. Janzik,
Yes,
Mr. Rotowski,
Yes.
Mr. Hollable,
Aye.
Mr. Fee,
Aye.
Mrs. Kraus,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Next item, recommend approval to enter into an agreement with Utica National Insurance Group at a cost of $74,468 and AM Trust Workers' Compensation Insurance at a cost of $32,903 as of July 1, 2021, per the attached document.
Second.
Motion before the board to enter into an insurance agreement with Utica and also with Eastern Alliance. No, I beg your pardon. AM Trust. And it has been seconded by Mrs. Janzik. Any discussion?
May I please comment?
Yes, I would like you to comment.
So last year, when the budget was being approved, the board asked me to research and come back next year, meaning this year, with a commercial package and workman's compensation. I did reach out to our current vendor along with Calvert Peterson Agency, which they're from Warren, PA. I have worked with them at a previous district, and that district is still using them to this day, which has been about 6 years ago. And they have proposed and provided the lowest cost to the district. The other district that I mentioned is still pleased with their services. And that's why I'm recommending them this evening for approval. As you can see, there is a savings as well.
There's a significant savings, as you can see. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Kraus?
Yes.
Mrs. Janzik?
Yes.
Mr. Hollowell?
Aye.
Mr. Lady?
Aye.
Mr. Ratowski?
Aye.
Mr. Everett?
Yes.
Mr. Fee?
Aye.
And Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Next item, recommend approval of the 2021-22 school year contract for reservation of one secondary student slot with River Rock Academy at an annual cost of $24,018.55. Elementary services as needed at a per diem rate of $191.28. This is a decrease from 2021 of $22,619.95 because of reserving one slot instead of two.
Second.
There's a motion before the board to approve the River Rock contract for the next school year, and it has been seconded. Any discussion? Dr. Corwell, we're dropping a slot here. How comfortable are you with that?
I am fairly comfortable with this. I think with the expansion of some of our online resources and also the York Adams Academy that is a lot cheaper, I think we will be fine. Also, we have Yellow Breeches to work with us. So I feel very comfortable with this.
All right, thank you. Other comments or questions?
What is the River Rock Academy?
Dr. Corwell?
River Rock Academy is an AEDY program, which means it is an alt ed program specifically for students who have had a serious offense within the district. It's generally a 45-day stay. So really, we're only utilizing River Rock at this point for very serious offenses, which we, knock on wood, don't have very often. So it's, I'm going to say, if you look at a continuum of outside placements, it's probably one of the most serious placements, if that makes sense.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Lady?
Aye.
Mr. Ratowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Janzik,
Yes.
Mr. Everett,
Yes.
Mr. Hollaball,
Aye.
Mrs. Kraus,
Yes.
Mr. Fee,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Next item, recommend approval of All American Athletics LLC to complete the project of sanding and refinishing the gym floor in Pitzer Gymnasium at Biglerville High School. The amount of $25,356 as approved on the March 16, 2021 capital expenditure listing per the attached quote.
Second.
There's a motion before the board to approve the resurfacing of the Pitzer Gymnasium floor. And it has been seconded by Dr. Fee. Any questions or comments? I would just note that this comes out of capital reserves, not the general fund. Hearing none, could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Hollaball,
Aye.
Mr. Everett,
Yes.
Mrs. Kraus,
Yes.
Mr. Fee,
Aye.
Mr. Lady,
Aye.
Mr. Ratowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Janzik,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Finally, recommend approval of the 2021-22 agreement between the Upper Adams School District and Marquee, Pennsylvania for the term of August 1, 2021 to July 31, 2022 per the attached agreement.
Second.
The motion before the board to approve the agreement between the district and Marquee, and it has been seconded by Mrs. Janzik. Any discussion? Again, just for clarity and making sure we're all on the same page, could someone please explain to me Marquee?
Sure, I can speak to that. Marquee is a placement for students who have some severe behavioral issues or students who have autism and require a more structured environment. Currently, we do not have any students at Marquee, but occasionally we do use that placement.
Thank you. Mrs. Hobbs, as I look through this, I'm trying to find the cost, and
The cost is the very last sheet. And it's by the per day or the per hour.
oh, I see it now. Thank you. All right. Any other discussion or comments? And this is this a new contractor for the district, or is this, I just don't recall these people, or are they replacing someone?
Marquee has changed its name. It used to be, I just lost the old name in my mind.
But if you did come up with the old name, it would be one that we have contracted with under their
We-
old name before.
It is. We do an annual contract with this organization. Like I said, we do an annual contract, but we don't utilize them too much.
All
We
right.
just kind of keep them just in case.
So this is part of our continuing arsenal of services that we have available.
That's correct.
All right. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Everett,
Yes.
Mrs. Janzik,
Yes.
Mr. Lady,
Aye.
Mr. Ratowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Kraus,
Yes.
Mr. Hollaball,
Aye.
Mr. Fee,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Kraus. That was quite a bit of work this evening. We move on to personnel, Mr. Ratowski.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilson. I'm going to take items 2A, 2B, and 3A together. So I would like to recommend to accept the retirement of Jacqueline McNeils with 37 years of service to the district as a business education teacher, effective at the end of the 2020-21 school year. I would also like to recommend to post and advertise for the replacement business education teacher. And then item 3A, I would like to recommend the approval to transfer the following classified staff member, Michelle Zimmerman, from library assistant at 3.25 hours and cafeteria aide 1.25 hours at the Upper Adams Intermediate School to library assistants at 4.75 hours for 181 days at the Biglerville Elementary School. And she would be replacing Mitzi Orner at the start of the 21-22 school year.
Second.
There's a motion before the board to approve the personnel items, section 11.2.2A, B, and 3A1 in your agendas, and it has been seconded by Mrs. Kraus. Any discussion? Mute. You're mute.
Wasn't a second ago. If I could add a friendly amendment to that, we accept Jackie McCandless's resignation with regret. Jackie has served us very well for 37 years.
And do you second the amendment to the?
I do.
The motion has been amended to accept with regret the retirement of Mrs. McCandless, and that motion amended motion has been seconded by Mrs. Kraus. And we wish her all the luck in future endeavors and thank her for her service to this institution over the last almost 4 decades. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to item 4A. I'd like to recommend the approval of Nicole Kelly, the secondary course director, category 8, year 4, for $1,388. And just a note that this is revised from August 18th of 2020, which was approved due to, or there's a change due to incorrect dollar amount.
Second.
There's a motion to approve the supplemental contract listed in your agenda at item 11.2.4A1, and it has been seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, could I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Hollowell,
Aye.
Mr. Lady,
Aye.
Mr. Everett,
Yes.
Mr. Fee,
Aye.
Mr. Ratowski,
Aye.
Mrs. Janzik,
Yes.
Mrs. Kraus,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Okay, I'll conclude with item 5F. I'd like to recommend approval to transfer Donna McCausland, the ESS permanent part-time, to ESS permanent full-time as a library instructional assistant at the intermediate school at the start of the 21-22 school year. And she will be replacing Michelle Zimmerman.
Second.
There's a motion before the board to, under item 11.2.5F1 in your agenda, to appoint Donna McCausland from ESS permanent part-time to permanent full-time, and it has been seconded by Mrs. Janzik. Any discussion? I have a question. Could somebody help me understand what a permanent full-time ESS teacher is?
Sure. With ESS, we have permanent employees, and originally Mrs. McCausland was part-time, and she is changing to full-time. So part-time, she worked 4 hours a day, and then full-time, she'll be working like the 7.5.
Okay, but
So we're just noting the change and asking for that board approval.
all right. But that doesn't mean she comes to work every single day, does it? Or or what?
No, just through the school year,
Well, okay, let me re-ask
the
my
school
question.
day, the school, when the students are in
How does
session.
this differ from the people that we hired as the music and art teacher for this year, which we are hiring full-time replacements for next year?
They're classified. This is a classified position, not a professional position.
Now I understand. Thank
Okay,
you.
sure thing.
But I wanted to make sure that I needed to know what I was voting on. Thank you. Any intelligent questions? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Hatowski. We move on to property, Mr. Hollabaugh.
Okay, I recommend the approval to pay the Arntsville Borough Bill number 13 in the amount of $2,318.96 as per the attached document in the agenda.
Second.
There's a motion before the board to pay the Arntsville Bill number 13 associated with the elementary school project, and it has been seconded by Dr. Fee. Any discussion? I personally support portions of this invoice, and that would be for the attorney, Mr. Altman. I do not support paying the KPI bill because we keep paying KPI through the Arntsville, and we're not getting anywhere. So I would support paying KPI at such time as they have reached resolution with the K&W engineers who work for us on the remaining issues associated with the district project going on in Arntsville. So as the motion stands, I personally cannot support it. Any other discussion? Hearing none, could I have a roll call?
I have a question.
Yes.
Did you want a motion to amend or?
Well, yes, I would, but I can't direct anybody to do that. But that was where I was headed.
I make a motion that we take out the Atlas part of the bill and vote on that and vote separately on the rest.
Well, okay. Just a process question. We have a motion before the board to pay the bill.
I vote to amend.
You want to amend it to pay only the Altland portion of the bill?
Yes, sorry. But it may die tonight instead.
Did you say you were second?
I'll second it.
The amended motion before the board is to pay the portion of the Arntsville Borough Bill number 13 that's associated with Mr. Alton, which comes to $188.50, and it has been seconded by Mrs. Kraus. Any discussion? Hearing none, could I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Everett,
Yes.
Mr. Fee,
Aye.
Mr. Ratowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Janzik,
Yes.
Mr. Lady,
Aye.
Mrs. Kraus,
Yes.
Mr. Hollabaugh,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
And I think that concludes all the items for property, does it not? They're all associated with the same thing. All right, we move on to transportation, which I believe is empty. No, it isn't. I'm sorry, Mr. Lady.
Yeah, give me a second here. It's not coming up.
Would you like Mr. Hall to? do
Yeah,
it?
if you have it up there, Bruce, if you can read that, mine's not popping up for me.
Yep, you got it. Recommend approval to add the following individuals to the Jacoby Transportation Drivers List retroactive to 4/1/2021. Mary Helen Santana, and that name is just a corrected spelling of the last name. Joseph Som, Kathy Lee Schull.
There's a motion before the board to item number, let's see here, 11.4.1 that corrects one person's name and adds 2 additional names to the Jacoby Transportation Drivers listing. It's been seconded by Dr. Fee. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We move on to curriculum. Mrs. Janzik.
I recommend approval of the 2021-2022 letter of agreement between True North Wellness Services and Upper Adams School District as per the attached agreement. This agreement does not have a financial responsibility from the district.
Second.
There's a motion before the board, item 12.1.1 in your agenda to approve the letter of agreement between the district and True North Wellness Services. It's been seconded by Dr. Fee. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mrs. Janzik. There's nothing this evening under athletics and nothing under other student activities, so we move on to policy. Mr. Everett.
All right, you have before you the minutes of our last meeting. You also have 10 first read policies that we worked on here the other week, and you have 3 second read policies. I would ask that we approve the minutes, approve the first read policies, and approve the second read policies for our policy book. And I make that motion.
Second.
I think Mr. Lady already seconded it. There's a motion before the board to approve the recent policy committee minutes, to approve the first read policies and send them to second, and to approve the second read policies to be entered into our policy manual. It's been seconded by Mr. Lady. Any discussion? Hearing none. Could I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Lady,
Aye.
Mrs. Kraus,
Yes.
Mr. Fee,
Aye.
Mr. Hollable,
Aye.
Mr. Rotowski,
Aye.
Mrs. Janzik,
Yes.
Mr. Everett,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Everett. Next item is miscellaneous. There's nothing on our agenda for that. And then we come to the payment of the bills. Do I hear a motion to pay the bills?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to pay the bills. It's seconded by Mr. Hollable. Motion made by Dr. Fee. And any discussion?
Yes, I'm going to abstain as my wife is a recipient of one of those bills.
Very well. Any further discussion? Call, please.
Mr. Lady,
Aye.
Mrs. Janzik,
Yes.
Mr. Hollable,
Aye.
Mr. Fee,
Aye.
Mr. Everett,
Yes.
Mrs. Kraus,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
All right. There's nothing on our agenda under old business or new business. Does anyone have anything they want to add into those categories?
I'm not sure if it's old or new. I had two comments I just wanted to make. The first comment, I wanted to compliment Beth Graham and Dr. Dahl for last week due to the tragedy that was happened here at the school with the student, and that they opened up the school to provide the services for that family. I attended both the viewing and the funeral, and I guess I could say that I'm proud to be a Canner. It was the right thing to do. I had a personal connection with Ethan. So did my son. So it was a tough weekend for all of us, but I believe the school acted in the right way. And I guess I know Mrs. Graham had a lot to do with it. So I just want to thank her personally and the administration for letting it happen. Second of all, with the budget stuff, I did give a thanks out, and I'd just like to say again, thanks to Mr. Everett for his emails that he sends out that maybe some of us don't like. I don't know, but I have read them all. And it has definitely helped me understand this budget process a lot better. I will say that some of it is still confusing to me, but it has definitely shed some light on some information for me. So thank you, Mr. Everett, for sharing that information with us. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Lady. Especially thank you for the comments about Mrs. Graham and Wesley Dahl and the tragedy that the entire district felt last week. All right, we move on to general information. The curriculum and extracurricular meetings will be in this, well, I guess maybe they might even be in the boardroom, but they'll be on the 1st of June at 6:30, followed by the Business and Operations Committee meeting. And the next policy meeting will be in June or July. That's a bit vague.
August.
I'm sorry, I misread it. You're right. The next one will be in August. There is no, as is tradition, there is no policy meeting in June or July.
June is the wrapping up of school, and July, we typically do not have one.
Understood. So the 5th of August will be the next policy meeting. And the next board meeting will be on the 15th of June at 7 p.m., either in this room or the boardroom, depending upon what kind of guidance we have at that point. All right. Anything else for the good of the order? All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.